Yes, I am on my way home now. Where? It is a land east of here, at least a week's journey. But where I am returning to is of no importance. Where I am returning from, now, there is a story. We had just entered the little village of Bethlehem. Could our calculations be off? Could all of the writings be wrong? We were seeking a king. Yet we saw no signs of royalty, or even of wealth. This couldn't possibly be the place. We had followed that star. We were sure it was leading us to a new king. We had gifts. Dejected, we decided to spend the night here and then head for home the next day. We found a small inn where we might have a meal and then bed down for the night. As we began to enter the inn, we heard a commotion behind us. Now, as a scholar, I've always been curious, so I went outside to see what it was all about. There in the street were 4 or 5 shepherds, speaking a dialect I could not understand. They were very excited about something, but because of the language barrier, I was at a loss to learn what it was. I turned to enter the inn when suddenly a word stood out from their conversation. Messiah. That was the word the writings used for the king we sought. Well, I ran into the street, into the midst of the shepherds. I must have seemed a madman to them as I tried to make them understand what it was I wanted to know. Finally, one of them seemed able to understand my limited Greek. And if I understood him correctly, some sort of messenger spirit had appeared in the hills announcing the birth of this Messiah. Well, I persuaded the shepherd to wait there, and I ran inside to get Caspar and Balthazar. Come, I shouted, he is here. We gathered our gifts, and we followed the young shepherd, who was quite proud to lead us to the birthplace of his king. He led us to an empty stable. No, you've misunderstood me, I told him. Where is the birthplace of your king, your Messiah? Well, the boy insisted that this was the place of his birth. Is this a joke? I demanded. A king was born here? Well, the boy explained that the mother was forced to give birth in the stable because all of the rooms in the town were full. Exploding with impatience, I shouted, well, where is he now? The poor boy explained that a room had become available, and so they had gone to stay there. We followed the shepherd to a small home near the stable. Could this really be a king? But my calculations, the writings. Despite my unease, I entered. There in the room was a common man wearing simple homespun clothing. He raised his hands in greeting. They were the hands of a working man, a stonecutter, or perhaps a carpenter. Next to him was a very young girl, younger certainly than my youngest daughter. And she held a baby wrapped in a cloth, with his face shielded from our view. I fumbled for words. The young girl smiled, and as she uncovered his face, she said, his name is Jesus. Oh, at the sound of that name, I fell on my face, and I wept uncontrollably. Oh, I wept, and I laughed, and I worshipped him. I heard music and voices like I'd never heard before, singing glory to God in the highest. I have no idea how long I remained there. But eventually I opened my eyes, and I looked up. The girl, his mother, was still smiling. I rose to my knees, and I reached out and I touched the baby's face. And when I did, he opened his eyes and he looked at me. Oh, those eyes. They looked right through me to the depths of my very soul. And when I gazed back at the baby, I no longer saw a baby, but I saw a king. A mighty and majestic king, the ruler of all, beyond what the eye could see. King over a dark-hearted and ruthless people. I could see myself as he saw me, could see myself in all mine and purpose. And I could see that I was in prison. And you were there as well, my friends. We were waiting execution for the crime of treason against the king. And then I saw the king come down from his throne to live like a common man. Remarkable. He gave up his royal privilege to come down and live among his people. And then the king came to our prison cell and demanded our release. Such mercy I'd never known. But he didn't just free us. He took the torture and the execution in our place. He voluntarily bore our punishment so that we wouldn't have to. And in my vision, I cried out, protesting, "No, I'm not worthy that a king should die in my place." And suddenly, the king was alive, and his glory was blinding, such that I had to avert my eyes. And when I chanced to open them again, I saw the baby. My gaze was still held by his eyes. Oh, those eyes, so filled with love. We left our gifts, which now seem meager. Gold, expensive spices, incense. I would give all that I have just to be able to touch him once again. We are the ones who have been given a gift. I've been changed, I tell you. In my old age, I am a changed man. And I will never be the same again.
Well, not here. The camel's are ready.
Oh, finally. I must leave you now, my friends. I'm anxious to complete my journey, see my wife, tell her of these things, and share my experiences with her. Safe travels. Balthazar! Balthazar!